Thanks so much for agreeing to come on the show. So, this is the Man Alive Minute, the 60-second quick fire round. What's your non-negotiable self-care habit?
3 meals a day at regular times.
I'll go with it's not bad, actually. Okay. Health myth you wish people would stop believing.
Well, that's a really tricky one. I did read an article once where they asked doctors things you wouldn't do, and they nearly all said, I wouldn't have a complete medical checkup.
Brilliant. I think you should have a complete medical checkup. So, good. We're not putting that in. One thing you do daily for your mental health.
Well, for my mental health, breathing exercises are good. And basically writing. Writing is a great way of you can get all your bad thoughts and give them to another character.
It's your catharsis, isn't it?
Yes.
Your way of expulsion of that. Yeah. Okay. And what's your guilty pleasure that feels healthy but isn't?
Drinking beer?
I don't know if that feels healthy.
Oh,
How does
it's
does-
hydrating.
It is, yeah. Yeah. Maybe if we start with your exciting career.
Excellent.
And maybe a little bit around writing and performing and how you think that might relate to your healthy or not healthy lifestyle that you might have had over time.
Well, I mean, writing is key to my physical state because I've spent most of my life sitting at a desk, tapping away at a keyboard, which is not a healthy lifestyle. And I'm not going to go down the standing up route. I hate standing up. So it's a career that suited me very well because I do like sitting down. But yes, if anyone asks me what I do, I say I'm a writer. Everything I've done has pretty much started with that. When I was a kid, I had no illusions that it might be something I could make a career out of. But luckily I have, and many writers find it very hard to support themselves.
At what point, if at any point, did you start to think, wow, sitting at a desk for 8-10 hours at a time or something might be not great for me?
Well, probably about 10 years ago, I was starting to get up in the morning and feeling really stiff, starting to struggle to, get your socks on first thing in the morning and back hurting. And I thought, I need to be fit enough to be able to sit at my desk all day. So I signed up for gym, and I now have a personal trainer who comes in twice a week. And yes, he deals a lot with flexibility and core strength. And, all of us, we really only really need to be fit enough to do what we have to do. And for that not to become something that harms us. So yes, I'm not working out in order to develop a great muscly physique, as you can probably tell. But because I like writing, and that's how I make my living. So I thought, I've got to do something to make it possible to carry on doing this.
So when you did the Fast Show's 30 years now, isn't it?
Yes, since the 1994, the first episode went out.
I'm digressing a little bit, but I saw this documentary thing you did a few years ago where it was talking about doing characters or the same characters decades later and how you tended to play characters that were older. So actually you were never seen as aging in the same way as some of the other characters you
I mean, it was useful. I always liked doing characters that had sort of lots of wigs and makeup and disguises or whatever. So yes, so doing that later on, you save a lot of money on makeup.
Yeah,
you don't need to age yourself anymore. I mean, the character that probably I really couldn't do anymore on TV is Ralph in Ted and Ralph, because the idea of that was he was a young man, a young landowner in love with an old man. His estate worker, and that dynamic, once Ralph becomes a pensioner, it doesn't really work. So that's not a character I could do. We're doing a tour, and I can do it on stage because it's kind of in front of an audience and they're not seeing too much in close up.
Yeah, but I guess Ted would effectively be 90 something.
Well, he'd be dead, let's face it.
Yeah, that'd be a really creepy romance.
But Paul, we do it on stage now. Paul basically looks the same age as he did where 30 years ago when we first did the sketches, but Ralph is now a raddled old man.
So I guess when you originally did the Fast Show, you would have been in your 30s, 20s?
Mid-30s.
So still with the power of youth, and you could sort of power through. I mean, I've never done TV sketch show once. I know it's surprising, but not my thing. So long days, hard work.
Yeah, I mean, when you're filming, it is very intense. And Paul and I, we wrote probably about 70% of the show. We performed in it, and we also produced it. So we were on it, you know, all year round, basically. You'd be writing for 6 months, and then you'd be in production for 3 months, and then you'd be in post-production for 3 months. And that is pretty intense, certainly in the filming period. Very long days, away from home a lot. And, you know, for me and Paul, that also required a big degree of concentration, because we're having to be aware of everything that's happening all through the whole crew, the production, the money, what other people are doing, the locations, where we're doing it all. So we had to be completely on top of that. So it is a strain. I mean, luckily, the show was successful. People enjoyed working on it. People enjoyed making it. But you know, you don't see much of your family when you're doing it.
So, in your 30s, most guys still have a degree of significant metabolic resilience. You know, they can power through a day. You can have 4 hours sleep, and you can do it again the next day. How does touring differ in terms of your ability to recover and get through a day?
Well, the touring we're doing now is very different to back in the day. The last tour we did was about 20 years ago, I think, and that was a stadium tour. That was playing to huge crowds, and we had to make that a big show.
So that one was Shooting Stars as well.
Well, that was the first one we did. Well, that was quite easy, because that was a 32-night residency at the Hammersmith Apollo, where they would do the first half of the show and the Fast Show would do the second half. So that was a bit like going to work. You know, you'd go there every day, you'd have your routine, you'd stay up too late, but you know, you didn't have to do anything the next day. But actually on the road, which was the tour we did, which was just us after that, that was a big number. We had like 3 big articulated lorries with all the technical equipment and the scenery. We had a big cast of other people on it. We had a big team doing costume and makeup, and that was a big number, and that was quite. I mean, it was amazing to do, but that can be quite stressful. The tour we're now doing is more of an old person's tour.
What does that mean?
It means we get to sit down for a lot of it. It's less rock and roll than the last tour.
I imagine less, you know, the Aerosmith and the 80s style, and more healthy,
Yes.
Rosemary and Thyme sort of stuff. So are there any things that you do now to try and keep yourself healthier, to get through a tour or to get through that process?
Well, you know, try and do stretching every day, breathing exercises, try and make sure get a good night's sleep. And, you know, occasionally use the gyms in a hotel or swimming pool and things. But because it's not a physically stressful thing to do. So, you know, you've got to try and be aware, sitting on a bus all day, that you're not eating crisps all day. You know, there's that sort of inbuilt compulsion when you're in that environment to eat crap.
Yeah, because it's like you're on holiday, or
yeah, it's like when you're driving somewhere, you buy crisps and chocolate in the service stations, because what you eat in a car on a journey isn't real food.
There's a whole rant, not for a podcast, but what they sell in service stations is not conducive to good health anyway.
No.
You know, and I'm sure we could do something that's slightly better than a pre-packed or processed sandwich that you think, God, I could have had something better. But that's another discussion.
A nice salad bar.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure I'm going to be doing this one. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Okay, so if I go back, say Fast Show, you were really young, healthy, it was easy, you can plow through the relentless hours, and then you went to writing, well, more so to writing in terms of books, and that was when the Young Bond series started. We'll get back to Charlie in one sec. Man Alive is a new show, and we have a huge amount of great celebrities and experts coming on to share with us both personal experiences and expert advice around men's health. as well as diving into real blood tests of our guests like Charlie's. Please press subscribe to ensure you don't miss any of them. And now, back to Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote 4 adult crime books before the Fast Show took off. But then once the Fast Show did take off, that took up all my time and energy and concentration. But then having done TV series back to back for a good, well, I suppose a good 15 years really, my kids had reached an age where I wanted to be at home more and to be able to properly be part of their lives from day to day. So I was approached by the Ian Fleming estate. I was in the middle of making a Swiss Tony sitcom and had a clandestine meeting where they eventually said, would I like to write a book about the young James Bond? And for me, that was absolutely perfect. My eldest boy was 10 years old. We'd watched some of the James Bond films together. I'd been trying to think of a book I could write for them that was a sort of action adventure book that they would enjoy. And I thought, well, James Bond is absolutely perfect. So we did one of them and it went very well and ended up doing a series of them, which was nice.
I'll come back to the physical health in a minute, but when you would finish your day, would you feel sort of intellectually or mentally drained from having done this work?
Yeah, it can do. Yeah, I mean, if you've had a very intense day, I mean, the brain uses a huge amount of energy. So, yeah, you do have to keep feeding it. But, you know, when you got kids, you come down in the evening, you can't just sit around thinking, oh, I'm exhausted. I've done so much thinking today. You've got to get stuck in and, you know, you're part of that family and, you know, it doesn't stop. So what's quite good from that is suddenly your brain is in a completely different place, concentrating on something different, and you're not, it stops you from becoming completely self-absorbed and self-obsessed. That being said, I think writers are a bit of a nightmare to have as a partner, because, you know, your life is always up in your head. You are always, even in the back of your mind, thinking about making things up. And whatever happens to you, something terrible happens and you think, oh yeah, I could use that. But no, I mean, kids particularly, you know, when they're younger, they have, the demand is so great that you know, you just get on with it.
Yeah, I suppose it is a 9 to 5 job when you're sitting there, but you don't clock off, do you?
No,
it's still in the back of your mind,
no,
and you can still pop in. And
it's 24/7.
I suppose that does feed nicely then into the sort of idea of looking after yourself a bit more. When did you think, I'm doing this for 8, 10, whatever more hours a day, I need to start thinking about my health a bit more?
Well, you know, for a long time I was roughly the same weight in the years when I was doing a lot of filming, because you know, that does burn up a lot of energy, and particularly when you're actually physically filming, you're on your feet all day and stuff. But you know, the weight started to go on, as I say, starting to get stiff, mild back pains, that kind of thing. The first thing I tried was running. I did the classic 0 to 5K app on my phone and did it quite comfortably within the thing. I mean, I lived near Hampstead Heath in London. I could run from the house down to the heath, round it and back. And, you know, for a few weeks I was thinking, great, you know, this is it. I'm a runner now. But then things started to twang and snap and pull in my legs.
I think snap is a bad thing.
Well, it felt like things were snapping. I'm sure they weren't, but and it was suddenly like, Christ, my legs can't do this. And I didn't know, so I had no advice whether I should be resting or whether I should be trying to push through. But essentially it got so bad I had to stop running.
When was this?
That was probably, it was in the past.
Are we saying pre-COVID?
Yeah,
as a marker of time?
Yeah, it was before I started going to the gym.
Okay.
Because I realized that starting running at my age was not going to work. my legs hadn't developed whatever they needed to develop over my lifetime to be able to allow me to do it. I still walk a lot, but I thought, well, I'll go to the gym. And that's where I met the guy who's Jordan, who is now my personal trainer. He does me and my wife. And he is very good because he works with a lot of older people. And, it's not about trying to make me look like a young Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's about mobility, core strength, flexibility, and all of that stuff. So, that's worked out very well.
So you mentioned when you were running that you developed problems in your legs, twangs and pains and snapping, which I'm going to ignore as something that we're not going to talk about. And this is pretty endemic in men who decide to take up a sport later in life. Again, when you're younger, you can just do it and it's fine. You pick up a new sport and you fly with it and it's easy. And the problem is there is an initial gain in terms of like neuromuscular connection. You can start to improve your function. You go for running, you think, wow, I can get into this. But you're not really gaining muscle size or strength much for the first couple of months. So you adapt sort of neurologically to the process and your blood pressure improves and your heart rate gets used to it and you think, I can do this. And then suddenly you're like 8, 12 weeks in and then your muscles kind of say, oh, sod this. I've not had time to grow properly.
Well, that's definitely what happened to me, yeah.
It's really common. Your tendons need time to catch up with the new stress on their muscles, and that takes time. So in these sort of scenarios, anytime sort of 40 plus, and I don't really care if it's 40, 50, 60, 70, it's all the same principle. I'd say generally 40 plus, you have to have a much more graduated process of doing this. And if you're starting to feel the twinge, you step it back and you go, right, if I did 5K today, I'll do 2.5K tomorrow and I'll go slower, or I'll add an extra 10 minutes to my time. And it's just a case of saying my body needs more time to get used to that. It's not saying you can't do it and you should pick something you like. But on the other hand, you might equally say that running's horrible and I don't want to do it. I hate running. So just pick something else. Maybe the key is find something you love or find something you're happy to do. And that's probably more important.
Yes.
And then it's just consistency. Do you mind asking how old are you now?
I have to think, so I've just had a birthday. I'm 67.
So we wouldn't necessarily class 67 as old anymore. Those are not.
Oh, so I'm not old?
No,
oh,
no.
Good.
Remember, everything's moving back around 10 to 20 years now. So
when will I be old?
I'd class old as 80 plus.
Oh, right.
So yeah, you could still go Schwarzenegger. We have time.
I don't want to.
It's all doable. I think the other thing is that I liked the NHS's plan around the couch to 5K because it was a tangible measure of what people could do to try and get fit. You could see I'm doing this and I get to that point. But you're right, the problem is it lacks context and it doesn't really say, well, what's best for you as a person? And then obviously a lot of people do it and then think, right, what now? And do I do it every day? Do I do it, where do I go with this? And then you get exactly the same problems you've had. I think clearly the good thing is that there was a drive and the thing in your head said, right, I need to do something to be healthier because you're right. And as I said before we started this, when you're in your 20s, like nothing touches you. You can just be immortal and you can eat and drink and go through your days and nothing changes. And then suddenly as your metabolism starts to slow, you're like, oh, Christ, I can't fit in my trousers anymore or something.
Yeah, no, but it's like when you get those sci-fi things where someone is suddenly rejuvenated. They're 20 years old again, and they go clubbing or whatever. But no, I mean, for me, if I was 20 years old again, I would be doing all those things that I just didn't think about at the time, like hopping out of bed in the morning, pulling on my socks, doing my shoelaces up without a problem at all,
without making the noise.
Yes,
when you bend it, you go.
That's what I'd do.
Yeah. So so fitness wise, that's much better now, and I think it sounds like you've got a pretty decent regime that works for you.
Yes, it does. I mean, I do have to have that impetus of the personal trainer coming. I'm very bad at doing it without that obligation. I'll always find an excuse not to. And there should be a word for the feeling of euphoria you get when you look at your phone in the morning and your personal trainer sent a message saying they're not coming.
Yeah, that could be the new book.
But if I'm right, I mean, it's like recently, I had a very heavy book deadline, and it was a lot of work. I've been writing my first non-fiction book. It's a history of the monarchy, based on a podcast that I do called Willie Willie Harry Stee, and you know, it was a hell of a lot of work. And so, you know, my wife was saying, well, you know, before work every morning, you should go out for a walk. And I think, yes, I should, but I've really got to get on with my book. And you get into a mindset of, I've just got to be there doing it. And you do have to try and break yourself out of that.
Yeah. I think a lot of, I don't know, sports, I don't know, scientists, trainers, whatever, influencers will say you just need to be more dedicated. But you can be really dedicated, but dedication doesn't mean anything if you're just not committed. And it's just consistency. So getting to the habit of doing something probably actually just counts more than saying I'm really dedicated for this week. It's just doing it the same thing year in, year out. So.
Yes.
I was going to go back to your desk thing, because actually you're right, standing desks, there is very little evidence that using a standing desk is better for your health than having a seated desk.
Great.
It's the change of movement.
What about lying down?
Well, as in all day, like.
No, I know that's not good.
Yeah, no, we could do a trial.
But no, I mean, you know, that standing desk thing, there's a certain type of people you see who do that, and you see that it's a compulsion they've got. It's something they've got that they've got to make writing difficult.
In terms of posture and ergonomics and what's good for you, the evidence is that you should be changing your position, whatever you're doing, every 30 minutes or so. So if you're sitting up, you get up and walk around for 5 minutes, rather than sitting for half an hour and then I'll stand up for half an hour, or worse is standing all day. That has no other total benefit than sitting. You know, the calories you burn by standing for an extra couple of hours, but you're still doesn't really make a big benefit. And your back's still going to hurt because you've been standing for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Plus your varicose veins are probably going to get worse. So it's just...
Well, actually, I don't have varicose veins.
It's because you're not standing for 8 hours a day.
Whatever, there we go.
But I'm not saying standing desks are bad. I'm just saying that it's the variation that's the key. So
yeah.
I think that's the important thing. If I go back to writing and performing or touring, so we sort of summarised that this was a period of seated time, writing, low energy levels, and I assume performing is still an adrenaline-filled experience for you.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, live, going on stage live in front of an audience is always a big hit.
How do you come down after that?
I drink very heavily.
Oh, God.
No. It's, well, the thing is, the good thing about doing it at the Fast Show is there's a team of us. Now, a couple of the guys, I mean, Simon Day does a lot of solo touring as a stand-up, and he talks about how stressful he finds that because it's just him. And when he comes off, it's just him. He's got no one to share it with. He's stuck by himself. I mean, he might have his tour manager with him or whatever, but stuck by himself in some hotel somewhere. And a lot of stand-ups talk about that, how difficult and lonely that is, and you're not sharing it. But the great thing about the Fast Show is we're all in it together. We come off, we can talk about it, we can go out for a meal or whatever. Those of us who still drink will have a drink, but you know, you don't get pissed, because the days of getting pissed and enjoying it have long gone for me. Yeah. But I do enjoy drinking.
I might touch on that when we look at your results, actually.
All right.
Just a slight air of anticipation. So what we kind of say to men as they get older is that your ability, obviously, to recover from the adrenaline is harder, because you can't just party on till 6 a.m. No. And then carry on the next day. So we started instilling quite rigid routines, which it sounds like you're kind of doing anyway, in terms of making sure you're getting 7-8 hours sleep where possible, and that the next day you're forcing yourself to get up early-ish. And like you said, if you're going for a walk or something similar, that's exactly the thing we'd want you to do, because then you're stimulating your body to say, right, now is my time to get up. Everything we do as we get older, it becomes more important around routine. The idea that you can't just rag it day after day like you could in your 20s. Obviously, nutrition is still very important, and you can't live off Haribo and What's-It on the stage that you could. Yeah, I know. It wasn't.
I was thinking of taking up the Haribo and What's-It diet.
It's the new one coming through. So you do have to think about, you know, protein intake and not having too many carbs after. And I appreciate that's probably really hard when you're out at a meal after and you're still.
Well, it's a really difficult thing with performing, and you know, performers talk about it quite a lot. Is a lot don't want to eat before they do, a show and have that weight, and it can slow them down. But by the time you finish, it's late. So I don't think anyone has found out the perfect solution to that.
This might be fun or just might crash and burn, but we thought we could try and look at some of your characters.
Yeah.
And then identify if they had any specific medical problems that we might be able to pin on them. So easy, I thought I'd start easy because it was Bob Fleming. Because
Right,
it's so
yes.
simple, wasn't it? Any suggestions on his side, or do you want me to go for it?
Well, no, I mean, he coughed. That was his thing. Paul, we were writing, creating characters. Paul came in one day and said, "What about a character who just coughs?" And actually, I did used to suffer from every winter. I would get bad cough, bad throat, sore up in the side of my head and stuff. I would get quite run down. And so Bob Fleming was in some ways an extension.
Yeah, so you're playing in character. I would have said either emphysema or chronic bronchitis, lung disease from chronic smoking, but you never see him smoke.
No.
So maybe it wasn't, maybe it's more like some sort of fungal or asbestosis disease in his lung from spending 30 years in a shed with all these spores floating around his lungs.
Fertilizer,
yeah.
The spores from the compost heap.
There's a lot of choices we could have gone with him, actually. Pigeon fanciers lung. That's a rare one to get.
Yes.
So he could have had that as well. I never saw the pigeons, but I like the idea of the outside sort of thing.
Probably would have get pigeons at some point.
Okay,
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because we never really thought what's causing the cough.
No.
And is it going to kill him?
I always thought that. I don't know. Maybe that's why I did medicine. Okay, next guy. Oh, Swiss Tony. Swiss Tony's easy. Oh, he's got to be either low testosterone or erectile dysfunction because he's overcompensating. Everything is like making love to a beautiful woman, I assume. So, did you have a context of why this guy said that?
It was just funny. I mean, all the filthy stuff was all written by Bob Mortimer. You'd have to ask him where that came from. I then tried to give a bit of context to it, and a bit of, a story around Swiss Tony, that his wife had left him and he's actually suffering massively from depression, which would fit in with what you're saying, that he's overcompensating for that and the knock to his manliness.
I'd like we to try and get Swiss Tony in for a blood test, see if we can get his testosterone down. That'd be great. Okay, the painter. I mean, that's a whole episode in itself, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Well, we definitely didn't want to try and say he's got this mental health condition, because that would put it too specific and it would start to be a little bit distasteful. So he's more just on another planet.
If you make it eccentric rather than psychotic,
yes,
it's funny.
Yes, he's no danger to anyone, I don't think, except his
poor wife.
Except his wife.
I always used to watch that and worry that the easels were going to clatter and hit her or something, but it was just.
I did occasionally manage to hit her with a painting.
Oh God! Right. Okay.
Well, if it's a canvas, they're quite soft.
Yeah. Well, that's fine then. It's okay.
But well, my whole drive in those was to try and make Arabella crack, and make her laugh, but she stalwartly kept it together, because when he kicked off every time, we couldn't rehearse that.
So she never knew, did she, when you were going to
go when you were going to say? She wouldn't know exactly what I was going to do, because I didn't know exactly what I was going to do.
Wow. Before you came in today, we got you to take our blood test. And before I run through the exciting results, was there anything you wanted to discuss with me or highlight ahead of time that you're worried about?
I'm not worried about anything, but I am aware that there are probably some things that are not as good as they could be because of my fairly sedentary lifestyle, the fact that I am overweight and could do with taking more exercise. And those things will, I'm sure, flag up something in your extensive tests. And I have to say, this is the first podcast that I've had to have a blood test in order to do.
It's something different.
Yes.
Yeah. And you don't go to the doctor very much, do you?
Well, if I've got something wrong with me, I do.
But not preventative, and not to look at things.
Not preventative, no.
Yeah.
I mean, the closest I ever came to that was, I mentioned before about having these recurring sore throats, which would then go down into the lungs and get coughs. And saw a lot of people to try and get to the root of it. And the interesting thing was whichever specialist you go and see, is always like, "Ah, yes, I can fix that. It's something that I can do," whoever it is. So, but eventually, the thing that fixed it, I mean, partly it was quite when I was having the test, it was quite a stressful time in my life. I was making another TV series. It was a lot of hard work. Partly it was getting rid of the stress and relaxing a bit, but the main thing that really fixed it was dental hygienist.
Oh, wow.
Properly cleaning my teeth, getting rid of all that kind of stuff. You know, I don't know the full science of it, but I think the plaque and whatever can get into your blood, and so on the back of that, I do regularly now see a dental hygienist.
Okay, well, I'm not a dentist or a hygienist, but we do know that actually gum health and dental health impacts on a lot of the wider
Yeah,
systems. And actually, yeah, so even like brushing your teeth is an inflammatory reaction and it causes a stress response, etc. So there's loads of stuff around important dental health. You're right. So coming onto your bloods, there's about
bloods.
there's about 60 markers in here that we do. So it's quite extensive.
Right.
And the idea is what we're trying to do is not just pick up any bad things you might have now, but also look at things you might be able to say, wow, if I did a bit more X, Y, or Z, I could be healthier moving forward. So the idea is if you're in your 60s now, can we pull you back to your 50s or your 40s in terms of health or other markers,
Yeah.
etc. So your core health is good. And that's the main thing that's really important. You're not
Okay. Well,
anemic.
thank you for that.
Yeah, well done. That was a lot of blood wasted there, wasn't it? Yeah, so core health is good. You're not anemic. Your immune system is normal. Your clotting is okay. And all the breakdowns of different types of the immune system are really good as well. One of the tests we do is called HSCRP.
Right.
So HSCRP is an inflammatory marker. It doesn't tell you what the problem is. And without context, it's not a great test because it doesn't tell you where a problem is. But for example, if you had a medical problem that caused inflammation, something in your gut or inflammatory in your chest, then the CRP goes up and you can then go looking for it of where it might be. So you mentioned, or at least I knew you mentioned previously medically, you might have had Crohn's in the past. We'll get back to Charlie very soon, but I wanted to ask you something first. Charlie's blood test shows some common issues faced by men in his age bracket. I want you to comment below on any challenges or concerns that you have. We'll be hoping to cover them in upcoming episodes. So back to Charlie.
Yes, I was treated for Crohn's disease for 3 or 4 years after I found I had persistent, not so much pain as discomfort in my lower gut, and did lots of tests and eventually did the old colonoscopy, which is a lot of fun. But I was talking to my consultant beforehand, and you have that slightly weird conversation about it, where you're both aware that he's about to stick something up your ass,
Yeah.
stick a camera up your ass, and film your insides. So yeah, and came out of that after I was sort of half under. He came out afterwards, and he said, "Well, the good news is you don't have bowel cancer." At which point I thought, "Shit, should I have been worrying that I had bowel cancer?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was good. But he said, "We're pretty sure you got Crohn's disease."
All right.
And as far as he and I were concerned, that was something I would have for the rest of my life, and it would be a problem. So I had to really start thinking about my gut and what I was eating, and how I was dealing with that. But he put me on a medication called Pentasa,
Mhm.
which is, I think that's the specific name of it rather than what the
Yeah.
actual drug is. He said, "I don't think it really does anything, but some people have claimed some benefits from it." And I started taking it, and things did get a bit better, and we went on to a higher dose. Um, and actually, the weird thing, and it may be completely coincidence, but I was in Italy and I went out with an Italian who took me to this seafood restaurant that did raw seafood. So we had a big dish of raw prawns, raw mussels,
Yeah.
raw anything you could think of. And afterwards, I became violently ill. My
Yeah.
whole system was purged, and my guts were fine after that.
I'm not going to recommend that as a general medical treatment
I
for people with
don't know.
Crohn's.
I'm going to go into business,
Yeah.
the raw
I feel
seafood
that's
diet.
more if we're
But
oh,
so whatever it was after that, the consultant went back to the consultant. He did all the tests. He said, "It shouldn't happen, but you don't appear to have Crohn's disease anymore."
I, I rarely am completely stunned about a medical answer for something. I don't know where to go with that. That is incredible because it matches your inflammatory markers now are virtually zero. So
So
something's
don't
happened.
knock
Yeah.
raw
I
prawns and mussels.
well, oh God, that's gonna
I mean, it was a
yeah.
psychedelic
I
experience
imagine.
in terms
Yeah.
of what it did to my body, but it completely reset my guts.
Well, that's the pentasa industry going out now. Liver's interesting because your core liver enzymes are great. So we have a thing called ALT and bilirubin and protein, etc. They're all great. And then one we measure called gamma GT, which is a kind of marker for alcohol intake, but is also an intrinsic marker of liver stress. You can't just use it for alcohol, but quite often it is. Yours is double what it should be. So normal's about 70, and yours is 147.
Right.
So does that fit with you having a bit more alcohol than maybe you would want to have?
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
I would want to have?
going back to what we talked about before, I am very aware of that, and you know, I don't drink to excess because it just takes. Well, I know it's not good for me, but also it just takes too long to recover. But I get into a habit of drinking every day, and then I think, oh, I need to pull back, I'm trying, to go for longer periods of not drinking.
But it's so
Enjoy it so much.
God. Yeah, that and raw
I
prawns.
don't enjoy
I
getting
don't
drunk
no.
at all, but I enjoy having a drink and then, as a social thing, but also just because I like it.
Yeah.
But I am aware that I need to cut down.
I think a mild reduction will probably get this back into normal. It doesn't take much to get the gamma GT down at this level. I mean, it's not the kind of thing where I'd be
So what,
freaking
like
out.
10 pints less a day?
If it's I don't know how many pints I think whatever you're doing, it's not just total volume, it's days off makes a
Yeah.
big difference. So maybe just adding a couple more of those a week. Again, I wouldn't be freaking out about this, but they're little soft
No,
markers
but
that
I mean,
say,
it's something I'm aware of, and yes, trying to build in not drinking as much as possible.
and then looking at your cholesterol, it's an interesting pattern. And we'd say medically, I appreciate this isn't the terminology used in the public, we'd say you've got a deranged lipid profile.
I've always thought I had a deranged lipid profile.
I'm going to stop using certain medical phrases with patients. I feel like I need to tone that down a bit. So your total cholesterol is really good. It's only 3, which is actually really good for cholesterol. Something like 5 or less for total would be acceptable. So that's great. And your LDL, which is your bad cholesterol. So LDL takes cholesterol out of or takes fat out of your blood and so the other way around. LDL takes the fat or cholesterol out of your liver and puts it in your bloodstream where it can stick to stuff like arteries.
Yes.
And HDL is the good cholesterol, and that takes it out of your blood and keeps it away in your liver. So you want lots of HDL and very little LDL, and that's why they say things on like I don't know butters and spreads, high in HDL because it's trying to improve the ratio. And your LDL is really low. It should be less than 3, and yours is 0.8, which is brilliant. So that's a really good sign. But your HDL isn't that good either. So it suggests you're probably not having enough good fats in your diet. So, things like avocados and nuts, healthy forms of fats you could get in a wider range. So you could probably start pushing those a bit more. The other interesting thing is your triglycerides are quite high. And so triglycerides are a different type of fat, but interestingly, they're often high in people that have more alcohol. Hence why it all kind of ties in a little bit together. The ratio of
We don't need Sherlock Holmes to tell us who the culprit is here.
it's not a no, it's not a like Murder She Wrote scenario. I could probably fix this one all right. Yeah, we do thing called apolipoprotein, and apolipoprotein is a really fancy test because it gives you a kind of genetic risk of having heart disease, and it's not 100%, but it gives you an indication it's related to cholesterol. And the idea with apolipoprotein is you can't do much about it. It's just your level that you've got, and yours is
Right.
great. So
Okay.
there's very little that I can suggest we need to do from that side. So genetically, it looks like your cholesterol profile is pretty good. It's probably a few things in your lifestyle that you're doing that might need a bit of a tweak. When we come to hormones, thyroid is looking perfect, and that's really good. One thing that's not so great is your testosterone, which is even better for me because it's my area of interest. So your testosterone has come back at 9 nanomoles per liter. And ideally, as a guy, irrelevant of age, we kind of want it between 15 and 30. So it's definitely lower than it should be. But the question is whether you feel any impact of that. So symptoms we think about in low testosterone might be decreased energy, decreased get up and go, ability to recover from exercise, brain sharpness, acuity, maybe drive or even sometimes anxiety, sex drive, erectile dysfunction, that kind of stuff. Whether you've noticed any of those markers recently or not.
Well, not particularly, other than, you know, I am 67. You very nicely told me that wasn't old, which is good to know. Um, but, you know, I don't have the energy that I had 10, 20 years ago. And how do you extrapolate? That's just because you're older. And now is it, you know, oh, I need more testosterone.
It's exactly that problem.
It's not,
Yeah.
it's not anything that I worry about. You know, I can cope quite well in everything I have to do. Um,
One,
so I don't know. It's very difficult to answer that question.
I think the way you phrased it, actually not being able to answer it is the exact answer that I would expect most guys to say. And there is a degree of controversy, even amongst doctors and endocrinologists who will say, well, are we medicalizing a normal aging process?
Yeah.
Because we are getting older and not everything is due to age and we all can't have the energy we have when we were 20. And that makes sense. I think the difference is we know that men with lower testosterone levels have increased risk of other medical problems. So we know that low testosterone is also linked to type 2 diabetes and is linked to heart disease and osteoporosis and losing muscle mass. And in your 60s, we think a lot about potential risk of frailty, which is a massive impact on the NHS.
Yeah.
Frailty, the concept of, and I know you probably know this, but can you sustain the ability to look after yourself over the next 20 years? So that'll be things like preventing falls and staying sharp and keeping your bones dense so that when you fall, you bounce, you don't break, that sort of thing. So,
Long time since I bounced.
well, yeah. What you do with your testosterone now or what you do with your health now is probably going to impact on what you do for the next 20 years. So this is the time you say, right, if I put those steps in now, I can still be bouncy in my 80s, even if you're not that bouncy, but more bouncy than you would have been otherwise. If you have no symptoms of low testosterone, there is the jury is out. Should we treat people if they don't have symptoms? But on the other hand, it's not something we'd want to ignore because you do have those other markers in your bloods, like the pre-diabetes, that might be made better if your testosterone was normal.
Okay.
So for you, irrelevant to podcasts and genuinely trying to give you the best advice we could, I would say don't treat the testosterone now. I would repeat it in maybe 8, 12 weeks. I would do what you could in this period to say, could I reduce my alcohol intake a bit more? Could I try and get a bit of the weight off to see if I could improve that? Because both of those will have positive impacts on your cholesterol profiles and your liver, and it might actually make your testosterone come up. And then if your testosterone is still low on the repeat, then we'd have that discussion about, well, do we want to look into those symptoms in more detail and say, should we treat it? Should we do something about it to try and keep you as strong as you could?
How do you treat it? How do you raise someone's testosterone?
You have to give it externally. If you can't find a reason, so if the reason isn't alcohol or it's weight or something else, we would give you external. And it's like male HRT, and we would give you a replacement. So we would give it to you either as a gel you'd rub in, or as a cream, or as an injection. And it's the one that suits you best, really. It's the best treatment. Generally, injections are probably the best tolerated, but everyone's individual. It's what works for them. And you'd self-administer the injections. The evidence base for testosterone is if you catch the right person, it's a life-changing drug, and it's brilliant. The key is catching the right people, really. And we don't focus enough on men in their 60s. And I think we really should be, which is why this is so great, really, because you'll be this kind of poster boy for templating what we need to do to try and get men in the early parts of senior life to stay as healthy as they can, so that when we do this repeat podcast in 20 years, you'll be like, oh, I'm really good now because I did those steps when I was younger.
I'm great. What happened to you, though, Jeff?
Well, no, thanks. We'll cut that out. Was there anything you wanted to ask me on your bloods at all?
No, that's so. I mean, at the moment I don't take any medication at all for anything, and you know I have a doctor friend who says, as far as they're concerned, everybody should be on statins after a certain age. Um, and I've been thinking, should I be on statins? And in terms of those tests, well, you said it's a bit deranged.
But yours, I think, is lifestyle induced. Your
Right.
cholesterol profile, actually, in terms of what the cholesterol numbers are actually pretty good.
Okay.
If you could reduce the alcohol, increase some healthy nuts, some avocado, that sort of stuff to get your HDL up, you probably wouldn't need a statin. There is an argument to say that all diabetics should have it and maybe pre diabetics, but I think we might be able to get away with not giving you a statin.
Okay.
There might be other stuff we could do, and maybe that testosterone is something to look at in a couple of months. But for now, see what you could do, and then I'd recheck it.
I'll be bouncing out of here.
Indeed. Thank you so much for coming on. You've been an amazing guest with some very interesting findings and stories to tell. We've got the sold out fast show tour.
There are still some tickets left.
And where
because
would
we are
one
adding
find those?
online.
Okay.
Because we do occasionally add an extra date if we think that there's demand.
And you've got your podcast.
I've got the podcast and the book of the podcast, which is out in October.
And what's the book called?
It's called Willie Willie Harry Stee. It's my history of the monarchy.
Same as the podcast.
Same as the podcast.
And it's the narrative story, isn't it? Tom
It is.
Baker,
It's
yeah.
telling the story in narrative order from the first Willie in the Conqueror through to Charles III.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Man Alive. I'm sure you had a mate, colleague, or family member you thought of at least once while watching this. Maybe a fan of the Fast Show. Share this episode with just one person and let's grow together. See you next time.